one of my teachers, Carmen Rich, said that our basic emotional needs are to love and be loved, to feel worthwhile, and to have somebody else feel worthwhile, and to have something to look forward to. And this chapel, for me, fulfills all of those, and I think it probably does for most everybody here. I really look forward to coming to church. When I was young and my parents made me go to church, it was like, okay, I gotta go to church. And I was so happy when I was like in high school and they said, okay, you don't have to go to church. So, but I really look forward to coming here. It's like a spiritual recharge for me. So what I want to talk about is spiritual psychology and codependence, which they're not the same topics, but they're very closely related. Spiritual psychology says that believing in a higher power, as God or whatever, however you perceive it, trying to be a good person, following the golden rule, you'll have a happier and more fulfilling life, and it will help you get through life's problems, and it's like having an ally, a big ally. Where did spiritual psychology come from? On a related story, this was in the Unity magazine in 1992, July of 1992. It says, "Is there no hope for me at all, doctor?" And this was a man who was a hopeless alcoholic, and he had relapsed many times trying to recover. And the doctor was Carl Jung, the psychologist. It was in Switzerland in the 1930s. And the patient was Roland Hazard, Roland H., who Dr. Jung referred to the Oxford group, which was a Christian group that had a 6-step program. And he told Roland, he says, you know, you got really a big problem here, but I've heard that these people have some success with addiction. So maybe you go try and see what you do. Well, anyway, it worked out for him, and he became sober and helped several other men become sober. And 2 of those were Dr. Robert Smith and Bill Wilson, who went on to found Alcoholics Anonymous. And the 12-step program came from the Oxford group's original 6-step program. And so this is the origin of spiritual psychology. And you probably know that the 12-step programs have been applied to many forms of addiction all over the world, not just gambling, whatever, and with a lot of success. So spiritual psychology is rooted in the belief that by turning your life over to higher power, God, universal spirit, however you perceive that force, that you'll be able to face life's challenges and prevail. This doesn't mean that you have to leave your spouse, join a convent, and all that kind of stuff. It just means that you acknowledge a higher power, and everybody has a different spiritual practice. So, some people it's prayer, and some people it's meditation, some people it might be nature, or for some people it might be a combination of things or something different altogether. For me, my platform is to respect life or God, to help other people, and to take care of myself. And that's what I try to do all the time. That's what, when I get up in the morning, that's what I try to base my life on. I don't always succeed, but we all have to make money and do the laundry and those kind of things, but try to keep it in perspective. So my platform is love God, help others, and take care of myself. But when the Pharisees asked Jesus, what is the law? He said, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So that, it's pretty simple, but it's what I try to do. Codependency, I think, is just another way of looking at human nature. Any of y'all familiar with codependency or read up on it? Studied? Oh, okay. All right, I'm preaching to the choir. I'm going. Okay, good. But my view, codependency was real popular in the 80s and 90s, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's not as popular anymore, but it was the thing, you know, for in the 80s and 90s. But it really helped me out a lot. For me, codependency is just another window or way to look at human nature. Codependency and spiritual psychology are related in that codependency is the problem and spiritual psychology is the cure. A Google dictionary definition of codependency is excessive emotional or psychological reliance on a partner, typically one who requires support on account of an illness or addiction or a perceived need. I think it applies to all forms of addiction, not just relationship addiction. One easy way to think of it is like you put all your eggs in one basket. So if you have a relationship that goes bad, and that's the only thing that makes you happy in life, then you're left with nothing. And I've been through that several times, and you know, depression is not good at all. There's actually not widespread agreement on what the term codependency means. But thinking of it as putting all your eggs in one basket is, I think, is a simple way to think of it. And some characteristics of a codependent personality, which you're probably all familiar with: controlling behavior, caretaking, judgmentalism, perfectionism, people-pleasing, alcohol and or drug dependence, scarcity model and zero-sum model thinking, and the big one is relying on one person or one activity or pursuit exclusively for purpose or fulfillment. My counselor recommended some years back a book called Recovery from Rescuing, and when I read the introduction to that, they started listing the characteristics of a codependent person. Honestly, I got chills. I did. I said, how does this person know me? You know, I've never met this person, and I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. It was like this person described me, and so I was real lucky. I was depressed several times over relationship breakups, and the next to the last time, I thought to myself, when I came out of it, I said, you know, I should have got counseling. It would have been better for me. You know, it would have helped me a lot. And so the next time, when it did happen again, and I thought, I remembered that. I said, you know, the last time I went through this, I told myself. And so I did. I had a buddy, Rusty Johnston, a wonderful guy. He said, well, you know, I went to this guy, Roger Wilder. He really helped me out a lot. And so I went to Roger, and he was into spiritual psychology. And so it was like, you know, meant to be. And he said, well, you know, you might read this book. It might help you. And it did, man. It really helped me a lot. If y'all know, the psychology community doesn't recognize spiritual psychology as a valid form of treatment. They talk about it in some of their material about that, yes, this exists and this helps some people, but that's about it. And I really was disappointed because I didn't get into counseling until I was 41 years old. And I took some psychology classes in college, and it was never mentioned. And I thought, you know, if I had been aware of this way back when, I wouldn't have to go through all this over and over again so many times. And the reason they don't recognize it, even though 12-step programs have helped people all over the world, a lot of people, that psychology itself was not widely recognized, or wasn't recognized at all by the psychology associations, because psychology itself was not recognized as a discipline until the mid-20th century. And now we think, oh, psychology, you know. But psychology was like witch doctor voodoo stuff until about the mid-20th century. And so psychology, even today, is still averse to recognizing spiritual psychology. because it's kind of, you know, anyway, it doesn't fit. So, and I really, you know, I wish they would. I think it would help people. Spiritual psychology and codependency are just one way to look at human behavior. I think it's a good way, but it's just one way. Let's see here. Some people can go through life just, I know some people who, because the way they were raised and everything, can go through life just being a good person. Well, I'm not like that. I've got a devil on my left shoulder and an angel on my right shoulder. Who remembers Snuffy Smith? You know, that's Snuffy Smith. And I have to think about things and manage myself all the time, or I get in trouble. I try very hard to listen to my angel, but sometimes, you know, so I pray, forgive me my sins, as I forgive the sins of others. And, you know, and forgiving others became much, a side note, became much simpler for me, and easier for me when I realized it was in my own best interest. You know, so think about that. If you're holding a grudge against anybody, think about it, that it's really in your best interest, or our best interest, to forgive people and let it go. So, parting thoughts, spiritual psychology offers an additional or possibly an alternate way of working through personal problems from traditional psychology. It may be an effective form of treatment by itself, or it may be useful when combined with traditional psychology therapy. And one thing my counselor told me that I think is really useful, if you have recurring patterns in your life that don't make you happy, maybe you should look at your behavior. Think about that. You know, that really helped me a lot. Spiritual psychology and the concept of codependency just offer you a window or another way to look at your life or human nature. If you look at the characteristics of a codependent person and you recognize yourself in those, and that you say, okay, I've been having problems with these other people, and maybe I've been using some of these codependent behaviors, then, you know, maybe it'll help you, or if you feel you're not a codependent personality, it may help you understand somebody in your life who is a codependent personality. So, that's about it. I have a reading list. If anybody is interested in pursuing it, I can give you a reading list about codependency and spiritual psychology if you want to pursue it on your own. And if anybody has any, that's all I have for you. If anybody has any thoughts they'd like to bring out about codependency, any personal stories, spiritual psychology, codependency. Marie.
How do you define spiritual psychology? What does it really mean?
It means by believing in a higher power that your life will be better. In a nutshell. By believing in a higher power and the whole surrendering your thing to a higher power, like the 12 steps talk about. I don't know, maybe I've got too much controlling behavior or something, but so I just think it's putting your faith in God, believing in God, that there is a higher power, and that if you align yourself with that higher power, then your life is going to be better, and it's going to help you. Whatever troubles come up in your life, you're going to have, you've got that to stand with you. You're not having to solve all your problems by yourself. That's my down-home common sense interpretation of it. What did Jesus said when the Pharisees asked Jesus, what's the law? He said, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think if you can align yourself with that, like I said, you don't need to quit your job and go off to a desert island somewhere and find a guru. I think if you just say, okay, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure anybody knows exactly what's going on. But there's too much order in the universe. There's too much to believe that this is just all a big accident. So once once you accept that and say, okay, and align yourself with that in the form of, be respectful. Whether you say worship God or just be respectful of life, respectful of the whole what's going on, or whether you're. I guess that's the other thing. Is that I kind of rambled on there. Is that Barbara?
David, I think one of the most important things to me that you said today was the point about forgiveness. Because if you don't forgive somebody or hold a grudge, it just rents space in your head. The other person is going about their life, they're not probably even thinking about you. And to let that go is so freeing, because then you're able to think about other things. I mean, grudges and not forgiving people just affects you. It doesn't affect them. And to me, that's one of the most important things we can do.
Yeah. When I was younger, I had a list of people in my mind that had done me wrong, and I thought to myself, if I ever get a chance, I'm not going to go out of my way to hurt these people, but if I ever get a chance, I'm not going to help. But I did. I had a list of people that I felt really, went out of their way to, put me in their sights. But when I realized, like I said, that when I have a very active reptile brain. That's why I have to monitor this. I'm sorry. I don't know why God made me this way, but He did. And you can ask my wonderful wife Karen here. Understanding all this really helped me a lot, and I've tried to be a better person, but I give my wife Karen much of the credit for putting up with it for over 25 years. All my relationships before only lasted a year or maybe less, and usually because my women left me. And I've tried to be better, honestly. Karen has put up with me in spite of everything. So I give her, I want a little round of applause. But when I realized that forgiveness was better for me, that's when it was easy to make the switch. It wasn't, okay, God told me to forgive, so I'm going to forgive everybody, and I'm going to be a good person. But when I said, it's to my advantage to forgive. So yeah, what Barbara said. Does anybody else have any thoughts about spiritual psychology or codependency or anything?
I'll share one thing that kind of goes along with that. I used to be a contract manager in Florida, and I had a lot of rape crisis. I was really involved with rape crisis centers in Florida. And because of that, I was able to go to some training. Most of the psychologists were in the training, and so I had opportunities to be with them a lot of the time. But I was in a real stew over a job situation. I hadn't gotten something I wanted. My relationship was absolutely terrible. And I was sharing this with a meal with several psychologist people around me. And I said, well, this guy was an eye-opener. As long as you keep your mind on that, you're going to stay in it. Take your mind off of that view and put it on a different view. It made so much, it changed my life drastically at that point in time. Just to look at some good and be in the now instead of in this, oh, I have been hurt. I am hurt. And you can look at the good. And that is kind of forgiveness, but I didn't see the word forgiveness.
Yeah.
It was, whether I'm going to forgive that person or not, look to the good. Look at and be now. To be now. Is that still important? That made all the world to me, is to get off of that stuff that I was carrying around in my mind.
Yeah.
Be now.
Change your focus.
Change your focus.
Yeah.
Don't look back.
Catherine.
Except to remember.
Well, I think what both of your words make me picture is how we think, because the thinking is what creates how we feel.
Yeah.
And when you said surrender, I remember the time in my life where surrendering became important. And it was all about non-judgment and not taking things personal. And that changed my relationships with the people I cared about so much. But it required me to think differently and hold that thinking in a level of consciousness that managed my behavior in a different way.
Yeah, I struggle with
My
that.
response.
Yeah, you can ask my wife, I'm not real good at taking criticism. You know, you know, she reminds me of that occasionally, and I try, you know. But yes, I get that, you know. Laura?
I just want to say, in my humble experience, not surrendering doesn't mean that I'm a victim again. It means that I'm letting loose of it, that I don't want this that you have given me. I am forgiving because it does not mean that I erased it, that it did not happen. Yes, it did, but you do not have that hold on my heart that you did. I have cut the strings and I've turned the new page. The new page is mine to write. Otherwise, I'm still your prisoner. I am turning that over because it's not the forgiveness is for them, the forgiveness is for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, you know. Yeah, but yeah, that's, yeah. Any other thoughts that we have? Mimi?
David, I keep thinking back about the best way to diagnose yourself as codependent is if you go to a movie or a play with your significant other, your partner, whatever, and you can't watch the movie or enjoy the play for worrying about your partner's feelings about it. Is he or she enjoying this or not enjoying it? Your thinking is so bound up in what that other person is perceiving.
Yeah.
You're not there at all.
Yeah, that I think that is the crux of the original codependent thing. But like I think it applies to other. You know, you can go out from there a little bit, but I think that does. Yeah, being attached too much. The classic definition is being attached to somebody who is needy, and so you feel like you've got to step in and fill that need for them at your own, you know, not so good. Yeah. Mary?
You know, the ideas that you've been talking about, how do you separate, or when do you think about the fact that not caring about that other person is selfish on your part?
That's a really good point, and it's something that the people that write about this talk about. When is it time for an intervention, or when is it time to let the other person? And there's not, you know, there's not like a strict book of rules or guidelines for that. You just kind of have to, you know. I was in business for myself most of my life, and I had people that worked for me. And as much as I could, I let them do things their own way. I'd say, okay, go mow the yard. I had one kid, he was a special needs kid. You know how you normally mow the yard, either go around in a circle or you know, or outline and get smaller and smaller, or you go this way, that way. This kid started mowing in crosshatch. He mowed one way this way, and then he'd mow this way. You know, and I had to say, you know, should I just let this kid do it? Well, I had to tell him because it made the grass look bad. It made the grass look weird when he got done. You know, I really didn't care if he mowed it like that, but it had this weird pattern. I knew the homeowner was not going to be happy about it. So, but I had, you know, I had thought about it. I said, you know, should I just let this fella do this? And I said, look, man, you know, I know you're doing a good job, but you really need to do it this way, and this is why. And he said, okay, you know. So there's not really just cut and dried rules for that. You know, you just, you know, and Karen's real. she's had a lot of training and experience with counseling and stuff too. And so I think both of us, you know, when one of us does something, the other, you know, we stop and think about it. You know, she had, what did you counsel me on the other day? Something. Oh, eggs. Eggs. We have our own chickens. We have our own chickens, and you're not supposed to wash the eggs when you get them out of the right, because it does something to them. I don't know, it makes them go bad or something. So, but you are supposed to wash them before you crack them, and well, I never bother with that. I figure the heat's going to get it anyway. You know, salmonella. But Karen says, David, you need to wash those eggs. You know, if I'm going to eat them, you need to wash those eggs before you crack them and cook them. And she had to think about it, you know, whether, you know, should I just let David do it his own way? Well, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sick. So I'm going to tell David that, David, you need to wash those eggs. So I don't know, Mary. It's just every case is different, and you know, when is it time? You know, I've got some family members who have some pretty destructive behaviors, and for the most part, I don't say anything. You know, they've got to find their own way. But there is time for an intervention. There is a time and a place for intervention, but every case is different on its own, and you know, you have to kind of decide on your own. I don't think there's any right or wrong, or you know. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
This takes me back to our founder, Rosemary.
Yeah.
One of our conversations that has stayed with me forever. You know, when you fall into a victim mentality, one time she looked at me at the chapel and she said, "Oh, but Teresa, God never meant for us to be a spiritual wimp." And when you fall into that victim mentality, you know, and the other counterpoint to that would be being the big B or a spiritual wimp, you know, where do you find your fine line? And I'll never forget, just right there on the doorstep, we're sitting and talking. God never meant for us to be a spiritual wimp. So with spiritual psychology, you know, that's an umbrella for a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
All right. Laura?
I just want to add to you and your wife's point, you know, when somebody reminds you of something, or you're just, you're doing something sort of your way, but in an act of kindness, they're reminding you, you know, now's the point where you should wash the egg, or, you know, to that, that's a good thing. It's like, oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. But when somebody's at you, and it's like you realize they're just fussing at you because you fried the wrong egg. Who cares which egg I fried? That's not helpful. That's not being good. That's not being a good input. But when somebody's input is like, honey, now's the part when we should wash the eggs because. But if it's just because, oh, I fried the wrong egg. Oh, I fried the wrong egg? Really? You lay your own egg. And then it starts another kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or you're like, fine, I'll never eat another egg in my life. Or you go lay your own eggs.
Yeah.
We'll start another thing. But there's the line there where about the psychology about one thing creates another kind of behavior. It's cause and effect.
Yeah. One thing I learned somewhere is, and this is really useful, I've had people thank me for telling this, that any unasked for advice is perceived as criticism. That's very, you know, that really, because I'm a big, let me help you, let me tell you about that, let me, you know, but that's really, and what Laura was saying, Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda said, fear never hurt anybody. He says, having somebody on your back all the time, telling you what to do and what not to do, is what ruins the spirit. So, Barbara?
Yeah, one last thing, and that's, for me anyway, is codependency. A lot of times you don't see fighting fair. And fighting fair is very, very important. And one of the points to me with fighting fair is you don't bring up the past.
Yes.
I've told you 1,000 times, when you did this 10 years ago, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just not fair. That's not in the moment, that's not moving forward.
Yeah,
And it doesn't really help either
yeah,
person. So, you know, part of what I said earlier is realizing the past is the past, you need to move forward. And to me, you know, if we teach our kids how to fight fair, you know, when you do this, I feel, I want, and this is where we're going to go.
yeah,
You know, if you can just learn those steps, I think relationships become a lot better. So if you're with a person who doesn't fight fair, you can just say that to them.
yeah,
And it takes an empowering person, I guess, to do that. But the point is, if we start with our kids young in knowing these steps, they become a lot more easy to work with as they get older.
yeah,
And also empower themselves.
yeah. All right, well, we're out of time. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.